Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Runnah. I'm Juliana, your host, and also, today, your guest. Because today we're doing a solo episode, largely because I wanted to do this for a little bit, and the schedule just worked out where I didn't have a guest this week. So this week, it's me! Hello, I'm also the guest and the host, which I guess would kind of be a ghost. So this week, I am a ghost, and we are going to be talking about something, like I mentioned, that I have been interested in talking about for a little bit, and wanting to talk about for a little bit and have mentioned on the podcast a bunch of times already, but that is going to be running while having multiple chronic illnesses. So many of you probably know that I have like three leading ladies when it comes to like chronic illness stuff on the physical side of things. We're going to count the dyslexia and the ADHD kind of like out of the picture for now. But when it comes to like physical chronic illnesses, in order of how long I've known I've had them, we have irritable bowel disease with constipation, we have ankylosing spondylitis, and we have Ehlers-Danlos. So I think I'm going to do an episode for each one of them because I feel like it's catering to a different audience of people a little bit. It's all the same, but I feel like each one has its own story that's also interwoven with each other, but it might just get to be too long of an episode and too convoluted if I did them all in one episode. So this week we're going to start out with what I feel like will probably be the most interesting, like on face value to a lot of people, because it's something that a lot of people in some capacity deal with when they're running, and it's also the one that I have known that I've had for the longest, which is irritable bowel disease with constipation. And I did look up a quick definition of this, and then we'll talk about my experience with it. But a quick definition of this is irritable bowel disease syndrome with constipation, IBD-C, a subtype of IBS characterized by chronic digestive issues, including abdominal pain, bloating, and difficulty passing stool. It's often linked to gut motility issues and heightened sensitivity in the digestive tract. So pretty much, things don't really move, and you have a lot of other issues around that, which is kind of my experience. So I've always been someone who's had GI issues. When I was a kid, we realized I was lactose intolerant, and I've just always been someone who I've been sensitive to food in a lot of ways, and my gut has also been really affected by stress levels my entire life. And it really hit home, because with most people with chronic illnesses, what's going to happen is you're going to have like one big event in your life that is going to unleash your chronic illness. This isn't the same for everyone, but I'd say at least like 50% of the people I've talked to who have chronic illnesses, you'll have one big stressful event that happens, and that just kind of unlocks the door that your chronic illness was sitting behind the whole time, where you were getting like some of the effects of it, but it wasn't like full blown. And by stressful, I can mean like physically stressful, like with the ankylosing spondylitis, I slammed my knee into the pavement and my body just like flared up like that. For the irritable bowel disease with constipation, IBD-C, that was the big event for me. For that was moving from college, like graduating college, getting a job, and then moving to Richmond, Virginia all by myself, because I was having like some GI issues my senior year of college because it was really stressful, all the what the heck are they called? Internships that I was doing. So that was like its whole other monster, but I was like, it was tolerable. But then when I moved down to Richmond, Virginia, I just remember having all these conversations with my mom being like, is it the water? What is causing all these issues? And then when I was down there, I had my very first GI blockage. And I thought I was in so much pain. Like I was in screaming pain. And I thought my appendix had burst. I was 100% sure my appendix had burst. And I was ready to take myself to the ER. And I called my PCP at the time and talked about her with it. And she was like, you should take some Miralax and some milk of magnesia and like wait an hour and then go to the ER. And I'm very glad that I did that, and I'm very glad that I called her, because I did that, and then that kind of like started the process of things moving through my system, and I was like pretty much fine after that. But I didn't actually start seeking medical attention for this until maybe like 2 years after that. And I was really hesitant to start medications. I'm someone who, if I don't have to take a medication, I don't want to have to take it. Like, I really just don't. And it reached a point where this was really screwing up my life. Like, I just remember being in Richmond, Virginia by myself. Like, I lived there fully on my own. I moved there all by myself. Did not know a single soul who was down there, and just moved there because the job was like, I had searched. I'm sure most people after college, you get in that kind of like hellscape where people are like, we want like 4 to 5 years of experience, but we don't want too much experience, but you just graduated from college, but we still want experience. It's like, okay, I can't get a job because every job I'm trying to get asks me to have experience, but I literally just graduated college. So I was able to find a job. I moved down to Richmond, Virginia, and I was down there, and I was up at like 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. with like screaming pain. Like, either I was like, literally, and we're going to get graphic through this. So if you don't want to hear about poop, sign off now. This is what this whole episode is about. Adios, poop haters. But I was either having like terrible diarrhea where I could not get back in bed because I just was like stuck on the toilet, or I was in screaming pain from constipation. And this was all new. This was something that like hadn't happened to me before, and I just didn't know how to deal with it, and I was losing sleep over it. Not just stress, not that it was just because I was like stressed out and I was like not able to fall asleep, but also because like I was literally up every night, and this was happening to me like at least every other night, and it just was disrupting everything in my life, and it was absolutely horrendous. So terrible. During this time I was still running, but this was a time when I was like just pretty much strictly treadmill running, to be honest. And I had a toilet that I could really easily access, and that was something that I really valued. The apartments that I lived in had like their own little gym, and so I would just go down there every day and do my run. If I had any GI issues, I would use the bathroom, and that was really like, I was maxing out at like 7 miles at that point, so I was like running in like a little over an hour. So it wasn't anything where like my running wasn't really pushing me in a way that I needed to be super concerned about the GI issues, and they were all kind of largely coming at night or just at random times. So it wasn't like super easy to discern when they were happening, but it was super easy to discern that they were really like fucking up my life. So I went to a GI doctor while I was down there. He gave me the IBD diagnosis, and then I actually got a colonoscopy when I came back up to Massachusetts about like 6 to 7 months later. And that's where one of my favorite quotes comes from that I've ever gotten from a doctor. And they told me that my colon was cavernous. And I was like, okay, cool, great. And what that meant is that on top of having the irritable bowel disease, I had, do not have anymore, we'll get to that in a little bit, a redundant colon. And what that means is that your colon is just a little bit longer, and it just kind of like, there's just more of it. And so it's just longer, and so things can get stuck in it. And that little redundant part, the long extra part, that's where I was getting all the blockages in my colon for the most part. I had this little part of my colon that things used to, again, we'll get to this in a minute, I would say, go to die, because things would get stuck in there, and it was like switch of the whatever, like flipping the switch on and off. I was completely, and this still happens to me, not as severely as it used to because I'm taking a lot of different medications. I had a colon resection. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I have many, many, many stories, many days where I have been completely fine. Nothing has been happening. And then all of a sudden, I am in screaming pain, and something is stuck in my colon, and it is so painful, and everything is backed up, and no matter what I do, I cannot poop. And then I end up in the ER. They put me on a morphine drip. They really like run me through the gamut. They do like the MRI. They make sure there's nothing like actually happening, blah, 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 like that they want to like take other action on, pretty much like flush or suck me out, and then I get sent home. So that's really fun. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. And so this was happening to me pretty regularly, and we'll get to how this affects my running in a little bit, but I was definitely cautious to increase my running, and also super, 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 super self-conscious around this in general. Like, I was not talking about this with like literally anyone but my mom, and just so worried that like people were going to find out I had GI issues, like I had poop problems and stuff like that. And even though I was going to the ER at least like once a year with a really severe GI blockage, like there were ones where like it was really painful, but I was able to take medications at home and kind of like work it through my system. But like I mean, this still kind of happens. I usually end up in the hospital at least once a year. Sometimes it's related to GI stuff, sometimes it's related to other things, but this, up until like the last couple of years, it's really been mostly GI issues. Not the best. I was really just worried about having to like poop while I was running, and I like controlling that and everything, and oh, I forgot this even happened. So I was running, I ran my first half marathon, everything went okay, and luckily, and I think just because like that whole experience wasn't like super duper stressful, because I knew a bunch of people were running it, like it was just it was an overall positive experience, so that was good. And that was when I was in Richmond, Virginia. I moved back up to Falmouth, where I live now, and things just kind of didn't get better. They didn't get better, and luckily for me, the town that I live in is like what I call the PPM, the Port-o-Potties per mile here, real high. There's a high PPM rate here in Falmouth, and it's fabulous, and I love it. And I realize that every time I go somewhere that's not here, that we're very odd in the fact of how many porta-potties we have like per mile, and also just around the town in general, between the beaches, between the bike path, between just like the public areas. There are bathrooms there. We got lots of bathrooms, which honestly for me is a real nice time, because sometimes you just have a really high PPM run where you got to have that high PPM rate where there's like 4 or 5 porta-potties per mile. So it's just a reality of the situation sometimes. So started running a little bit more, and during my first round of my training for my first ever marathon in 2018, I was running the Cape Cod Marathon. I was training for it. Before I kind of started that, I had started having this thing called rectal prolapse, which is kind of common if you have IBD-C, just because what happens essentially is, and maybe we'll put an illustrated version of what's happening here up on the screen. I don't know. I'll see what I can find. If there's nothing here, it means everything I found was like just a little bit too graphic for my liking. But essentially what happens is that your colon is like trying to move things through its system, and it just can't. It has mobility issues. And so in the same way that like you can have mobility issues with other parts of your body, it's just not working and it's not moving properly or quickly enough. And so the other parts of your GI tract try to compensate for that. And one part that tries to compensate for that is your rectum, which is the part where your poop kind of goes before it gets out of your body. And so it tries to push things out on its own. And what happens sometimes is you get rectal prolapse, which essentially is like your butthole popping out of your butt. So your girl Juliana was having that for almost a year before I actually went to a doctor about it, because, you know, trying to ignore things, it's fun, it's great. And then I ended up going to a doctor. They ended up doing what I call sewing my butthole back in my butt. I don't know what it's a rectopexy, that's what it is, a rectopexy. They essentially sew your butthole back into your butt. I haven't had this issue since, which is great, but it kind of didn't solve the issue of the constipation. So between that first marathon and also like everything else that I had going on, I was seeing multiple different GI doctors, trying to find one that would like listen to me. Because one of the biggest problems you have as someone who has chronic health issues is going to be people not listening to you, and people not taking you seriously, and specifically doctors not taking you seriously, specifically usually male white doctors not taking you seriously if you are female. But I was having a really hard time finding someone who would like take me seriously and didn't just tell me to take more Miralax, because that wasn't working. Like I had been trying all the over-the-counter stuff at this point, different formulations, concoctions and stuff like that. And you very clearly learn as someone with chronic illness that you kind of have to be the one curating your medications. Your doctors are going to help you get the ones that you probably should have, but you have to be the ones to like kind of try the different dosages, combine them with things, like try them at different times of the day, things like that. You have to, you're responsible for your own shit. Like, you got to take responsibility, and you have to actually like do a lot of work. And I think it's something that really gets discounted. And shout out to all my other chronic illness peeps, because it's one of those things that if you don't have a chronic illness, you're never going to think about. You're never going to think about, oh, I should take these 2 meds at night and then those 2 in the morning, because that's the best combination. Because if I do that, then everything lines up properly, and then I can poop at night or in the morning or whenever you need to poop or whenever you need to do your other bodily functions. Because otherwise it messes up my whole day, and then I have to take a giant shit in the middle of the work day because I took this medication in the morning instead of at night. And everyone's body reacts differently to all the different medications. So find out what works best for you. Please do. Please do. Please do. Please do. Please do. I've been seeing a bunch of GI doctors. Currently, I'm taking a lot of I have 11 medications that I take every day currently. Not all of them are GI medications. Most of them are just kind of all over the place. Like, I think I have like 4 or 5 of them are GI medications. 2 of them are like really heavy duty. And those are the ones that I've had to like really go to specialists for and like trial and error a bunch of things. At this point, around like 2018, 2019, I had run my first marathon, and I was trying out different things. I ran the Boston Marathon, and that was terrible. I was in a porta-potty from like mile 15 on. I mean, even my first marathon, I played more porta-potty hopscotch, like around like mile 21, 22. Ask Mike Falcone, he lost me then. And I didn't think I was going to finish, but I did, so that was great. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey trying to figure out which medications work well for me, and also learning my own body, because that is something that is really valuable when you are someone with a chronic illness, is learning like, okay, this is what my body does when I'm stressed. This is what my body does when I'm okay. This is what my body does when I'm cold, when I'm hot, when I'm, I don't know, standing on my head, whatever. Running a race. And also, my body also just loves, and I'm sure most people with chronic illnesses also feel this way too, loves to keep me guessing. We always try and like keep the possibility door just like wide open, because you never know what's going to happen next. Right now, I'm in a decent spot when it comes to like GI stuff and figuring out what's going on, because I've been living with this for a long time. But let's reverse ever so slightly, and let's go back to about 2 years ago, 2023, June, the very end of June 2023, when we lost that redundant piece of my colon. Because one of the things that you'll notice if you ever see me outside running, and it's warm outside like it was today, is I have a very interesting scar on my stomach, and it's big. It's like big, big, big. I'll flash it up here on the screen right here. It's obvious. Like, if I'm running in a sports bra and shorts, you will see this. And I get a lot of really weird looks from people, because it's the wrong way for a C-section scar, but it's big enough and it's huge and it's right down my stomach. But I have gotten like a few knowing glances and nods, and like also shout outs from people who clearly either know that it's a colon resection scar or have one themselves. Because if you see other people who have had colon resection, this scar looks, they all look pretty similar. That's my sick looking scar right there. But what happened to get that scar is a fun story. So buckle in, friends. So as we mentioned, Juliana used to have a redundant colon. Used to, not anymore. Used to have a redundant colon. And I think it was like June 29th or 30th. It was like the last or the second last day of June. I can't really remember, in 2023. So I had eaten some corn and peas with my dinner that night, and I went to bed. Everything was fine. Was having a good day. Was actually going to start my New York City Marathon training block that coming Saturday, and this was a Thursday. So I go to bed, wake up at like 2 a.m. Friday morning. My GI tract is en fuego. Like, it is on fire. It feels like it wants to explode itself. I don't feel okay. I have a really, really painful GI blockage, and I know this because, again, this is something that I've gone through before, and so I'm aware that there is a GI blockage happening. And so I go through my normal medication route. We try like an enema, we try more Miralax, we try more what I call poop juice, we try more of our other medications. And normally, if this is like a normal GI blockage, it will, even if it's not going to solve the problem, it will help a little bit, and I'll feel a little bit better. And this was making it worse. Like, this was making it very bad. And I got to the point where I was walking around my apartment, like shaking, like absolute, like because my body didn't know what to do with itself. I was like having weird hot cold flashes and like physically could not stop my body from shaking. And I was like, I need to go to the ER. And I really hate going to the ER. I mean, we have a really good ER here in Falmouth, honestly, especially for a smaller town. But like, you all know how it is. You go in there and you like lose your entire life to the ecosystem that is the ER. And it's just, you're at the mercy of everyone in there. And granted, everyone I interacted with was very kind and very nice. And like, I've been to the Falmouth ER a lot of times, whether I like it or not. And I'm sure they're all just waiting for me to make my yearly visit again. Because it actually has been since I got back from Tokyo last year that I've been to the ER, which is great. We love that. But I took myself to the ER, and you said, Juliana, that was not safe. I mean, it's a mile down the street to the hospital. It's like a mile-ish. And I knew I could drive myself, and y'all know how expensive an ambulance is. Don't judge me, okay? I'm not paying $2,000 to go a mile down the street. Like, I'm so sorry. That's not happening. So, drive myself to the ER. In the process, like, text my mom being like, hey, I'm going to the ER, just so she knows. And then I'm like in screaming pain. Like, I'm trying to find a position I can sit in where my GI tract doesn't feel like it's trying to actively escape my stomach. And so they get me in, they can see that I'm in like a shit ton of pain. This is the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. Like, I can't think of anything else that has been more painful than this. And so they immediately hook me up to like a morphine drip. They shove one of the nasogastric tubes down my nose. I'll put the picture of that up here because that's like a nice little visual right there. But they shove a nasogastric tube down my nose. They are like, you need to drink this for the MRI, the little like MRI milky shaky thingies that they give you. And I was like, I can't. I feel like I'm going to explode, like I'm going to vomit, and I'm also trying to poop. And I'm also like, just my body's trying to escape itself all at the same time. And so they do a bunch of images. I don't even remember what they did because I was just like in like a coma of pain. And they pretty much came back to me and said, we need to remove your colon. Your colon has tied itself in a knot, and we need to remove it stat, or it could explode and you could get like really terrible sepsis, and also you're going to feel your colon explode inside your body. And for reference, I had been told before this point by multiple different GI surgeons and doctors that this could be a possibility for me. And I was in so much pain that I literally was like, put me the fuck out. Let's do it now. And they were like, well, you might end up with an ileostomy bag, which is the little bag where they take your colon apart and then they stick it on a bag and then they tie off the other side. And that can be permanent or that can be semi-permanent. So hopefully it would have been, if that had happened, semi-permanent, but I did not want a bag. I don't want a bag. I really don't want a bag. It's something that like I've thought about that I might need at some point, and I don't like the idea of it. Like, there's so many things out there that I'm okay with. This is one that I'm sure if I had to, I would be okay with it, but I'm not okay with it right now. No, absolutely not. And so I just literally was like, put me out. I am in so much pain right now. So much pain. They put me out. I wake up. I don't know how many hours later it was. It was like some number of hours. The first thing I do when I wake up is I feel my stomach. And there's no bag. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I turned to the nurse who was there. I was like, no bag? She's like, no bag. I was like, oh my God, thank God. And so I look down and I have a patch on my stomach that's like bigger than my head. And it's sitting on my stomach, and there's like a blood spot here and a blood spot here. And they had told me before the surgery too, they were like, oh, it's probably gonna be like laparoscopic. And I said, great. And that's when they do like these little incisions, and then they like boop, pull it out, and you got like two or three little incisions, and that's kind of it. And they're like, yeah, we didn't get to do it laparoscopically. I was like, I kind of guessed by the giant patch of like bandages that's on my stomach, you know. So then I was moved up to the hospital room upstairs, and long story short, like spent a couple of days walking like a crazy person on the L curve trying to get my GI tract to move and poop. And they had to give me more medications for that to happen. which is not a surprise to me. And honestly, the worst part about all of it was the fact that my abdomen was on fire the entire time, because they essentially like ripped me apart and then sewed me back together. And my abs, when I was standing up, were on fire. Like not standing up, but like using my core muscles was so fucking painful. Oh my God. Just felt like I was getting like shot with electric shocks like up the sides of my abs every time I tried to like move and use those muscles. So that was a wild time. And eventually they did take the bandage off, and as you might have guessed already from what we talked about earlier, there was a giant scar and 20 staples underneath there. And I said, okay, well, I guess this is how we're living our life. For reference also too, I have plans to, as soon as that scar feels good to me right now, I don't think it's good. It's been like 2 years, but it's still like not in a good spot for that. But I'm going to get tattoos all over my stomach. Like I'm going to work my leg tattoos up into a stomach piece and incorporate that scar into it. Because the scar is pretty sick. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a cool, like, party trick, you know? I can be like, hey, want to see a sick scar? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, here, check out. And they're like, whoa, wow, boo. For all my Drag Race fans out there. But it's not super great to think that you maybe have, like, 1 or 2 staples, and then they pull it back and there's 20 and a giant scar in your stomach. So, not ideal, but not the worst thing. I didn't have a bag, so I was very happy about that. And that was when I was starting to train for the New York City Marathon, and I left the hospital, and the next weekend I did a 14-mile walk, and I said, ha 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 ha. But we were smart about that. Where we stand right now. So that's kind of the backstory. That took a really long time. I'm so sorry about that. Hopefully, like, you guys you identified with some of that. I don't know. But let's roll that into running. So how does this affect my running? I think the best way to say that it affects my running is that it's one of the main things I think about when I'm running is, am I going to have to stop and poop? Do I need to stop and find a bathroom? Is there a spot around here where I can jump into the woods where like it's a public space, so it's not someone's private property? And if I need to take a poop over here, I can. Like, do I have toilet paper on me? Is there a public restroom around here? Is this a high porta-potty per mile situation? Do I feel like I can trust my GI tract? Is that a fart or is that something else? These thoughts are constantly running through my head, like all the time. Like 90% of the thoughts I have when I'm running are GI related, because my GI tract will just do random shit. It just, like, literally. It just does random things, and then it's very important to me to be able to poop before I run. And like, if I can't do that, then I get really nervous, because I've also gone out on runs where I haven't pooped before I run, and then I get a GI impaction / blockage because said poop that should have come out dried itself out because I sweated, and now I have something that I need to like go to the ER or something a little bit more minor at home for. I feel like if you're someone who suffers from GI issues, it's kind of like it's kind of like the main thing you're thinking about when you're running. It's something that I know a lot of other people think about too, and I don't understand how people don't think about. Like, I'm just like, what? You're not thinking about if you have to use the bathroom, where the closest bathroom is? Like, you don't know where all the Port-o-Potties are in your town? How do you not know where the public restrooms are? I mean, if you come to me at any given point in time, I can probably tell you within like a 15-mile radius where 90% of the bathrooms and Port-o-Potties are. Just because, like, I mentally clock them, and at some point I'd like to do a map of all the Port-o-Potties, like an app or something that's interactive, and kind of like ways where people can like confirm that the Port-o-Potty is still there or not while they're after they come back from their runs. And like say like, oh, the seasonal bathrooms opened up, or oh, today the Port-o-Potties came back to the beach. It's something that a lot of people think about, and I think a lot of people also aren't willing to say that they're thinking about it, because it's something, it kind of comes back to that book we all had as kids called like Everybody Poops. We all poop, you know, and it's part of your digestive tract. It's like a bit like job to get things out of your system. And if you're jostling your GI tract for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5+ hours and just like putting yourself into like a shake and bake, like, you don't think that's going to shake stuff up and make your GI tract move at all? It probably will. And I mean, I'm just here to kind of like share my experience and de-shame and demystify what it's like to run with GI issues, because I mean, the big thing for me is I have to give myself a lot of time before I run. Like, I get up like at least an hour and a half before I run, because I need to make sure that anything my body wants to get out, we get out. Because if I don't, I've learned that that can lead to a GI blockage, and I don't want to go to the ER. So I have to do that. I also stay very hydrated. Definitely am someone who I drink like probably like 5 to 6 liters of fluids a day, and I don't drink caffeine, and I don't drink alcohol. I just don't really like alcohol. But it's just like, I try to stay away from things that are dehydrants. I try to drink tons of fluids, and I make sure that my morning when I'm going for a run, I give myself sufficient time to use the bathroom. And it's something that, like, on a race day, I'm really thinking about, because I don't want to have to stop. And it's one of the things where people are like, oh, I'm going for a PR. I've learned that for me, unless it's a race that's like really short, but I mean like less than an hour, usually if I'm racing it, so like a 10K or less. And the Falmouth Road race is kind of an exception too. But if it's like an hour or so of running or less, I can probably go for a PR in that distance. But if we're going to be out there an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, the probability that my GI tract is going to work with us gets lower and lower the longer the distance is and the longer the time I'm out on feet. So I've learned that it's not good for me, and this is something that like I've learned across all of my chronic illnesses, it's not good for me to pressure myself for a time goal, because I've had some really great days where my body has been feeling great, and then all of a sudden my GI tract shifts and I spend like 5 to 10 minutes, which is quick, honestly. I have a very high turnover rate in a porta-potty. Thank you so much. And I am also a speed peer, so please put that in my book of talents, you know. But like, I can easily lose like 10 minutes to the porta-potty. When you're on Strava, it doesn't count your non-moving time, so that's fine. But your race results, when you're at a race, your chip time doesn't take out your porta-potty time. So I can easily go from running like a 3:45 to like a 3:55 just because my GI tract, and that's if I stop once. I can easily go from like a 3:45 to like a 4:30 in a marathon because I have to stop multiple times to use the porta potty. And that's costing me 5 to 10 minutes each time. God forbid if it's like Tokyo too, where they have the porta potties like a quarter of a mile off the course too. Forget that. Absolutely forget that. So I've learned, and I'm sure there are other people out there too, that you have to be willing to adjust your goals as you're training and also as you're running your race, because sometimes your body just doesn't want to do it that day, and sometimes your GI tract just like can't, or something just happens, or your body just wants to do something, and at a certain point, you have to do what I have coined already as chuck it in the fuck it bucket and figure out what the least path of resistance is. Do you keep running and like shitting your pants? I mean, you can. There are people who've done that. Is it ideal? Are you going to have like butt chafing the whole rest of the day? You're not going to be able to sit down for like 3 days because you shat your pants and gave yourself diaper rash? Probably. Do you want to just stop at the porta potty, give up on your time goal, and make your goal finishing and actually like not have giant like diaper rash all the way home and just be able to finish? Probably more desirable, to be honest. You're not going to hit the time that you want, but you're going to feel better at the end of the day. And then also like having to be like, okay, now I have to rehydrate more, thinking about things like that. It gets challenging sometimes, especially if you really want to reach a goal and you keep getting derailed by certain things. And I mean, this kind of comes back to one of the things that I more or less work towards every time I run a race or do something is I always say I'm never going to be the fastest, but I'm always going to have the most fun. Because even if you're having a bad GI day, like there's usually something you can like hook onto that's good. And maybe you can just mooch off the joy of someone else in the race and just be like, give me your joy. Ah! Maybe they're having a great day and you can vicariously live through them through that race. And that is going to be the joy that you find in the moment. Even if you have nothing, like nothing, your tank is freaking empty. You're done, like physically, literally, GI-wise, everything, mentally, empty. You can find joy in other things. You can find joy in other things. And that's why I'm like, I'm never going to be the fastest, because one, we'll get to this hip thing in a further episode. Like, I have ankylosing spondylitis. My hips only let me go so fast, you know. I started doing speed work like a little bit ago, and my hips were like, absolutely fucking not. Okay, great, cool. Glad that we're in the same boat. That's part of the equation, but then you can have the most fun. You might not be the fastest, but you can always have the most fun. That is an option that is always open to you, all the time. But with racing and running, yeah, I give myself a lot of time before I go running, and I need to make sure that my GI tract is as empty as it wants to be. And then when I am running specifically for me, and like this is my own experience, this is not everyone else's experience because everyone's bodies are different, I only take on fluids. And I've also recently started doing like liquids/soft foods only the day before like a bigger race, like a marathon or something. I have no idea how people like eat sushi and then go run a marathon afterwards. I'm like, I can't do that on a good day, you know? Or people who like have coffee, like have like a full English breakfast. They're like, I have my blood sausages and my toasted jam and like a coffee, and then they go run. I'm like, how do you do that? I don't understand. So I've started doing like liquids and soft foods like the day before, and then we do just liquids in the morning, and then just liquids during the race. And then usually afterwards, all my body wants is just liquids too, because my stomach gets kind of upset afterwards too. So, but I found after years of trial and error, since 2018, this has been an evolving process, that this seems to work the best for me specifically, because, you know, sometimes your GI tract just starts moving when you're running, and it's better for it to be like easier to evacuate your system than it is to have things that are going to get like stuck, which is what I've learned. So that is definitely part of the process. But I think the biggest thing I want to hit home with this GI issue related thing is that everyone has some kind of poop story. Everyone who's run longer distances. You've all shat in a bush before. I know you have. You've like tried to find a bathroom in a Dunkin' Donuts and you're like ready to explode out of your body with a poop. I know you have. There's someone out there who's done something, and everyone who's ever run a longer distance, like half marathon or longer, specifically like marathons and ultra marathons too. I mean, what do you think these people who are outside in the woods for like 5 days are doing? They're shitting in bushes. Okay? You have a poop story. And I remember the first time, and there should be a memorial like plaque for this spot in Falmouth, the first mid-run poop that I took that was not like, that caught me by surprise, and like I was out on one of my training runs. It was like a 22, I think, mile training run, 21, 22 mile training run. And I was making my way up through the Sipawissa Hills in Falmouth. And I had not been doing good GI-wise the entire time. Like, it just gassy and like stomach upset and like not feeling great. And then all of a sudden I felt something shift and I was like, oh no. Oh no. What is coming now is not a fart. It absolutely is not. And so I had to pull over into a bush. I know exactly where that bush is. And I took a poop in the bush, and I had never felt so ashamed in my life. I was like, my body is the only body that's ever done this. No one else's body has ever taken a poop mid-run. How can my body just be so offensively terrible? And how can I do this to this poor bush? No one else has ever done this in their life. And lo and behold, I went and I talked to some of my friends who had run marathons before, and they all, at the ready, had poop stories for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Also, one of the big pivotal things that I found for me personally has been listening to the Allie on the Run show. This is a podcast that's been long-standing for a while now. And Allie, who is the host, is someone who has ulcerative colitis. And so she has many a poop story and is also a runner, and also just like speaks about things like this very candidly, which I really appreciate, because that really empowered me to start speaking out and also seeking medical help, and also realizing that literally anyone who runs like longer distance races has had an emergency shit at one point in time. So even if you don't have GI issues, and I was much more prone to be having emergency shits than anyone else. So, no. But that happened, and then I realized that I was definitely not alone. So I just want everyone else to know that you're not alone either. If you're someone who deals with GI issues, if you feel like you think about having to find a bathroom a lot more than everyone else, one, you might be thinking about that a lot more than everyone else, which is fine. It's okay, you know. Two, I hope that you're seeking the appropriate medical help, you know. Hopefully you have some doctors that are working with you if that's something that is pervasive outside of just like your running or whatever it is. So hopefully you've been able to find help for that. And three, you're not alone. You're definitely not alone at all when it comes to having GI issues and being a runner and having to manage that, having to think like, okay, do I have to get up earlier than other people so I can use the bathroom multiple times? Do I need to adjust my fueling strategy for me specifically so that way I can make sure that my GI tract is in the best spot when it comes to like starting running and also taking on things while I'm running? And do I need to have certain things ready for me when I finish? And like that way I can make sure I'm rehydrating correctly, or I need a certain medication when I finish or something like that. Knowing your own body and all these things is really, really important, but also realizing that you are definitely not alone in all these things, and like not being the person who can just go to the pasta dinner the night before and like eat whatever they want and be fine. You're not alone in that. There are a lot of people who that's not their story. That's not their truth. And they need to be a little bit more individualized with what they're doing. And they suffer from GI issues, just like I do, and just like I'm sure some of you do as well, too. So you're definitely not alone in that. And like I said, at some point, I'm definitely going to try and make a porta-potty map of Falmouth, Massachusetts, because like for me, that would be useful too. And I know there's some other people that have expressed an interest in that as well too. But having to use the bathroom while you're running shouldn't stop you. You should be able to largely work around that if you really want to run. If you really want to run, I hope that at some point, if you are someone who like has been letting your GI issues really run your life, and not letting you get in the running or the walking or whatever it is that you would like to do, I really hope that you are at some point able to have your chuck it in the fuck it bucket moment, where you have tried everything for the most part. Like you feel like you have a good grasp on things overall. Hopefully you get the appropriate medical help. You realize, like I did, I had the chuck it in the fuck it bucket comes from a moment when I was having terrible diarrhea. I realized that I could, and like it had been hours, and I had wanted to go for a run. It wasn't resolving, and it was just kind of gonna be what it was gonna be. And I realized in that moment that I could either sit here in my bathroom, being miserable, and just like soaking in the air of my apartment, and just just feeling even worse, or I could go outside on a route that I knew had a high porta potty per mile amount, and I could go for a run or for a walk if it turned into that, and get some fresh air, get some movement in my body, and feel like better overall. So I said, chuck it in the fuck it bucket, and I went outside. And I actually felt better after, like a lot better after that, and that was great. Sometimes you just gotta chuck it in the fuck it bucket, and you just gotta say, fuck it. I'm just gonna go do what I wanna do. And I've tried everything up until this point. I'm gonna be safe about it. I'm gonna bring extra fluids with me. I have my phone for emergencies. I am going to make sure that there's a lot of places where I can stop and use the bathroom along the route that I'm going to run. But chuck it in the bucket bucket. I'm just gonna go and do it, you know? So I hope that if anything, if anyone is watching this, which hopefully at least like one person does, I don't know, who identifies with it. I hope that you realize you're not alone, and I hope that you realize that like you can do it. Sometimes you gotta chuck it in the fuck it bucket, but you got it. I believe in you. If I can do it, why can't you do it, you know? I've really got nothing else nothing with my anatomy and medical things that says I should be able to run longer distances, even though it is kind of like not clinically proven, but it's very much so like common that a lot of the people who run like ultra distances are people who also have chronic illnesses, because you kind of got to be a little bit like masochistic, and if that's the correct word, and you also have to be someone who has a really high pain tolerance, because like I'll go out running and like I'll come back and I'll be like, oh, that was fine, and like someone else next to me like, oh, my ankle, whatever. Not that they're like weenies or anything. You really gotta like break a bone on me for me to be like, whatever. Because like I just live with pain all the time. And like I live with a lot of GI issues like all the time. If I have to take a bathroom break during a run, that's just a normal run. That happens literally every time I go out running. Every time. And I know for some people that's like detrimental. Like I was talking to some woman before I ran the Tokyo Marathon last year. And she was like, I think I'm considering wearing, because Tokyo is notorious for having the bathrooms like way off the course. Like way off the course. And so she was talking to me and she was like, I don't know if I should wear a diaper because I've never had to stop to use the bathroom during a race before, especially a marathon. I'm like, never? Never? Even to like just pee like during a marathon? How? And she was running like a 5.5 hour marathon. And I was like, how do you go 5.5 hours of running without having to stop? Like I stopped like twice on a regular hour-long run. She's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna wear a diaper. I was like, okay, sure, you know? And she was like freaking out. I was like, my friend, this is just like day-to-day shit right here. Like literally shit. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild, it's wild, it's wild, it's wild. You're not alone. That is my irritable bowel disease with constipation story for all of you. Some encouragement, like how you run with it. It's still happening. And really the moral of the story is get appropriate medical help. Stand up for yourself. If you're feeling a certain kind of way, you're probably feeling that way. Don't let a doctor invalidate you. You're not alone. I don't know if I said that anymore. And chuck it in the fucking bucket. Because at a certain point, you can only do so much. And you gotta just say, hey, I accept where I am right now. And I don't like it. But I can either be grumpy here, dealing with these symptoms, or I can be outside, a little bit less grumpy, getting some movement in, and still dealing with those symptoms. But the outcome at the end of the one where I'm out getting movement and fresh air is a little bit better than the one where I'm stuck inside, breathing in the fumes of my toilet for hours. Great, love that for us. But that's kind of the end of that. We will get to my other chronic illnesses at a different day, time, place, whatever. We'll talk about ankylosing spondylitis, which is the muscle and joint issue that I have. And then also we were talking about Ehlers-Danlos, which is a new diagnosis for me, which is so fun that I get to add another Pokemon to my Pokedex, you know? EDS, woohoo, yeah, my favorite Pokemon. But thank you guys all for watching today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the Runnah community, you know? Everyone here is so wonderful and fabulous. And please, like, if you would like to share your story, if people would like to share their stories, I'd love to share them here. So if you are someone who suffers from any kind of chronic illness and still is like running and walking, shoot me an email at runnahpod@gmail.com or comment below if you're with your story, or hit me up on Instagram at runnahpod. And I would love to share people's stories. If I can get enough stories, I'll do a whole episode just sharing people's like chronic illness stories and how they have like still run and walked with chronic illness. So, because I know there are so many other people out. I'm not the only one. I know that for a fact. And I would love to share some of your stories. I know we had Lindsay Benson on, who's one of my good friends, who talked about her cancer diagnosis and how she's continued to run even through that and like ran the Boston Marathon with that. Like Lindsay's a fucking badass. Definitely, I would love to share people's stories. I would love to share people's stories. So please share them here. Please, 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 please. And if you did like this video / podcast / audio thingy-majiggy, please like and subscribe and leave us a 5-star review if you're over on Spotify. And yeah, this has been really nice. I've really enjoyed being able to just kind of like dump my junk out on the table for the GI issues side of things. And I hope that people identify with this a little bit. But until next time, we will see you on the next episode of Runnah. Goodbye, my friends. Ooh, I got the hiccups now. Oh no! Ah! Thank you for listening to this episode of Runnah. This podcast is edited, hosted, and produced by me, Juliana Coughlin. Brought to you in part by the Falmouth Running Club and the Falmouth Community TV station. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram and on TikTok at runnahpod. And you can send us an email at runnahpod@gmail.com. And our original theme music was brought to you by the one and the only wonderful Jeffrey Hutton. And keep up the great work. I'm proud of you.